And everything that you say is recorded now, so don't say anything ridiculous or crazy. Don't say anything that's going to get you canceled.
I'll do my best.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Good Thursday. Good week so far.
Steve's been dealing with a lot of tickets, I think. Steve and Colette.
Yeah.
We have a support team of 2 hardworking folks, and we did a promotion recently, and that always brings in a bunch of people inquiring and asking. So kudos to the support team. I mean, they're the unsung heroes of what we do.
A lot of the questions that we get, I mean, it's going to be a lot of similar stuff to what we discuss here on today's podcast, because we get questions from everything regarding technical support to bug reports to purchasing questions, and then also questions like how do I make contacts in the industry and other things that are similar to the kind of things that people wrote in about. So looking forward to diving into a lot of those.
Well, you guys ready to start?
Yeah.
Welcome to Orchestrated, a Musio podcast where we discuss the past, present, and future of music creation to explore exactly what it means to be a musician in the modern era. I'm Chris Hayzel.
I'm Mike Patti.
And I'm Steve Goldshein.
And today on the pod is part 2 of our Mailbag episode. A few weeks ago, we answered your questions about creating music, navigating the business, whether or not music school is even worth it. And your questions were so good, in fact, that we weren't actually able to get through all of them. So this week, we're picking up where we left off. So if you submitted a question and we weren't able to answer it last time, we hope to be able to get to it this time around. But before we dive in, you can follow us on Instagram at Musio and subscribe on YouTube at musio.official for more content. And if you're a music creator looking for great virtual instruments, be sure to head over to musio.com to get over 1,800 top-of-the-line virtual instruments completely free for 30 days. And last but certainly not least, if you like this episode and you want to hear more like it, don't forget to rate it, review it, share it with your friends. You know, we're still a fledgling podcast, and every little bit helps. And if you have any questions about music, the business, the creative process, anything, email them to us at orchestrated@musio.com. So without further ado, let's get to it. Steve, would you like to do the honors?
Yeah, we're going to pick up with a question about protecting your songs and compositions from other people making money off them. The question comes from Peter S., who is a Canadian amateur songwriter and composer, a hobbyist sample library collector, looking to practically protect his songs, compositions, and performances from other people making money off of them after releasing them on a service such as DistroKid. I realize there are tens of thousands of songs released each day. The chances of making any money off them are slim to none, but would like to at least be able to protect myself against someone else stealing my original work, making money from it. I'm aware that copyright only requires that you write down a song in some fashion, but it's proving that you did so is the trick. So what is the best way to record a copyright in case of a later dispute? If there is a dispute, what can I do short of launching a lawsuit? So this is a very deep question, very nuanced question.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, isn't
Chris,
there like, there's a way to submit for copyright, like not just writing it down, but like actually submit with like a copyright office that they keep record of what you've done, what you haven't done, registering your music with a company like BMI or ASCAP or something like that keeps record of it as well. Is there more to it than that? Have I been doing it wrong this whole time?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, I would say you're much more likely to make money from a track than to have somebody steal it. If you're worried about people stealing your music, I mean, first of all, I just don't think that that's something that's worth worrying about, because it's just such a rare thing, especially if you're just starting out. I mean, if you're a big time producer who's making songs that are making millions of dollars a month, that's a different story. But I remember I had a piano teacher, and my piano teacher was an old school composer. He was just self-published, and so he would literally just write out his manuscripts. He didn't have a printer or anything. He would write it out like this, and then he'd put it in an envelope, and then he'd write a self-addressed envelope to himself.
Yeah, that's called a poor man's copyright.
Yeah, exactly. And he would just have it sent to himself, and then he would just not open it.
Yeah.
And it would have the date on it, so that in case there was a situation, you can prove and you say, look, that this mail that I haven't opened from this date, Nowadays, it's the moment you create something on your hard disk, it's instantly by copyright. I'm not a copyright lawyer, but it is instantly copyright written. It's done. It's yours. So technically, like, there's nothing physical that you have to do.
I mean, yeah, I'm not a copyright lawyer either. I know that there are a lot of services that work with organizations. I mean, you mentioned DistroKid. There's also things like there are various organizations that work with the PROs, ASCAP and BMI, the publishing rights organizations, and it's largely their job to make sure all of that stuff is properly paid out for and licensed and registered and done. But for the sake of protecting yourself, the best thing you can do is be organized. And yes, having a system of some kind, whether it's that old school method of mailing yourself a copy, or simply just having the files rendered and have all the right metadata, because when you bounce a track out of Logic or whatever your DAW, you can add all of that information to the track about your composer, the year, the date, all of the notes that you need to do in order to make sure it's organized, and then keeping a spreadsheet for yourself and keeping some kind of meticulous record, which I know is not the most fun, creative thing. But if you do, I mean, this comes back to a lot of what we were talking about on the last episode of this, and again, further back with the episode with Brian talking about treating yourself as a business and making sure that as a composer, or a music creator, if you're trying to make money off of what you're creating, being organized about it and having all of that information so that you know and you can reference what you've done, because it's, especially if you're creating at the rate that you're creating for music libraries or other things where you're putting out an enormous volume, or if you're a producer making a lot of beats and you're just putting out tons and tons of beats, it's really hard to keep track because, oh, wait, did I do that? Oh, yeah, I did that. That was, 3 years ago. We don't, remember all the things. So it's really important to make sure that you have that information at your disposal as you create it. So,
but then if you do see a violation, the best thing to do, you don't have to go lawsuits and all of that stuff. You can write a letter. They call it a cease and desist. You can, and if the person who is making money off of your music, well, first of all, congratulations, because that means that your music is like, right? It's like valuable. But you would find the person who's doing that and just say, hey, I see that you're doing this. Please take it down.
Yeah, I think what you said, Mike, about the chances of somebody stealing your music to make money off of it are actually quite slim. But here are a few things that you can do. I just looked it up. Just go to, and this is where I've registered my music. Go to copyright.gov/registration. If you go through and you register all of your music, like let's say you recorded an album, before you release that album, register it with copyright.gov, every song, the contents of that song. I think you even upload an MP3 or something like that. Yeah. And as you do that, as you release more music, it'll keep it under the same name, under the same person. So if it's registered there, you're good. Also, I think, the whole point of copyright is basically to say, yeah, I was the first person to come up with this idea. I was the first person to create this music. All of the release dates when you distribute music through DistroKid and or any kind of other distribution channel, it's all recorded. On the date that it was released is recorded. So if somebody else tries to release your music or something that sounds exactly like your music, and for some reason you want to send them a cease and desist and you need proof of that, you can point to the fact that you actually were the first person to publish this music. If you want to be extra careful, do a poor man's copyright, mail it to yourself, don't open it, put it in your closet, don't touch it. But there are all of these things that are in place sort of automatically now with just the way that music creation and distribution and all of those things work that sort of cover you.
Yeah, good advice there. I think this is a really good question because it leads to a lot of it speaks to a lot of other things about the music industry and monetizing music in general. And this is one of the many ways to make money from music, is by just putting it out there as music to be consumed and listened to and paid for. There are a lot of other ways to make money from music, and there's another great question in here about how to get the music selected. So Jim C asks, besides dumb luck, how might a new composer tilt the odds in his or her favor when trying to get selected for music for film, TV, and video games? And this is another great question, because dumb luck's a lot of it. Like, let's be realistic about that, because in some fashion, it's about who you know and what your career has led you to throughout there, and there's always an amount of luck involved in there. But we talked about it a lot on the last episode. It all comes down to relationships and who you know and who they know and who they can introduce you to. And
there's a theme. If you go back and listen to every single episode of this podcast, save for maybe the very first one, but there's a running theme that it's all about relationships and who you know. One thing that was an interesting point that came up in JB's episode. And if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check it out, because it's really good, even though I screwed up the audio on it. But JB sort of turns that, it's who you know phrase on its head. And he says it's about who knows you. Are you the person that people are talking about in the rooms when they're talking about their projects? Yeah, if you know a lot of people, that's a good thing. But if you've worked with them and you've shown up and you've been a pleasant person to work with and you turn things around, relatively quickly and easily, and it was good work, then they're going to be talking about you. But yeah, it's a theme. It's a theme in all of our episodes. Relationships. It's a relationships game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's
like, how many times can we say it?
Yeah. We do get this. I mean, it's worth, I guess, repeating. I mean, it's all about, like, going to the places where people are hiring, and
right.
There's a temptation to want to hang around with a lot of composers. Mm-hmm. I think as music creators, like, we'll go to GDC and all the composers are there hanging out, and it's like, well, okay, that's fun, but like, don't spend your time doing that. Like, be the only composer in the room. That's what I've seen. Like, when I hear stories of, like, my much more successful friends, it's like they have these stories where, I decided to, like, put all of my money into getting a membership at the Soho House. It's everything I had to make myself look like I was an important person. And this person got there and they would just hang around and try to, casually network with people, and or invite people to, like, hey, I'll meet you at the Soho House. I don't know if that's how it works anymore, but this person is a very successful composer right now, and they've developed a lot of great relationships, and it's doing kind of crazy stuff that's a little bit outside of the box. It seems to always be the theme that I hear.
Yeah. And also collaborate. Collaborate with people. The thing about JB is that he was working with people on projects when he was in school for composing, and they sort of, like, rising tides raise all ships. Like, as each of them were sort of advancing in their careers, they knew each other and they had worked together, and, like, finding people to collaborate with, even if it's not necessarily a paid job or necessarily like a big job that you want on a hit TV show, even finding small projects to work on, just continuing to do that, that's going to also be a great relationship builder.
It's more about developing a career than finding that one job. There's really there's a tendency, I think, when looking at this industry from the outside in, to think, oh, it just takes one big break. You just got to write one hit song. You just got to score one big film. You just got to get one big AAA game project, and then that's it. That'll set you up for life. And that's not necessarily how it happens. I mean, I'll go as far to say that's necessarily not how it happens, because in order to it takes years and years to become an overnight success. It takes millions of failed, unfinished songs to write that first big hit. And sometimes it takes a really long time if you're going the route of putting music out there and hoping for it to become licensed for a project someday. That may take decades. I mean, what happened with that song "Running Up That Hill" from Stranger Things? That was a fairly, it was it was well received when it came out, but then it wasn't for decades plural later that it became a global phenomenon because it was picked up for a TV show that was already huge. You know, it was so the steps involved there were write the song, put it out there, have it be distributed, and then sit on it until this show got to its 4th season and was a huge phenomenon. So when you're creating music that's a collaborative part of some other creative media, it can take a really long time for the media itself to develop to the point where it's big. Nothing about this happens overnight. Nothing happens where you just put the song out there and everyone immediately hears it the next day and everyone loves it. And then right after that, it's playing in every club and every scene of every movie and show. And it takes a long, long time for these things to happen. So when you approach this kind of career, if you're just getting started, don't be chasing that one big thing. Treat it as the career that you develop is going to be the many projects that you do over the course of it. And you have to enjoy the process. If you're just looking for a way to, you know, nobody gets into music as a way to get rich quick. and if you do, I got some bad news for you.
No, that's a really great way of putting it, Steve. And also, you know, not only will building your career over time set that foundation that you're talking about, but also it'll help you hone your craft. You know, as you're working on this, you're going to grow and change as a music creator, as a composer, as a musician, as an artist, whatever it is that you're doing. You're going to grow and change. And the best way to do that is through actively making music, actively working on projects, actively building your craft.
And I'll leave it with this, maybe a practical tech or advice that you can, or tactic that you can use that I've seen a lot of composers do. And our friend Christopher Leonard's, who we know, I used to work for him a lot. Incredibly talented composer and just really smart with business. And one of the things that I've seen him do often was, you know, there might be a project, and I mean, this is something, if you can afford it and do it, you know, hire an orchestra, you know, for 15 minutes in, you know, Bratislava, or, you know, one of the pickup orchestras in, there's one in Scotland called Clockwork that they do these open orchestra sessions, and you can do a demo for fairly inexpensively. And I've seen Chris do this. Like we did something years ago for a Marvel movie. I helped him orchestrate, but he wrote this music, and we had the orchestra play it, and it turned out really great, and he submitted it. He never got the exact gig that he was going for, which was one of the main studio features, but he got a TV show out of it, which was really cool. And, you know, you never know where it's going to lead. So it's like, it definitely catches the attention of people. They're like, wow, you know, it's like, holy crap, really? You did all this, you know? And he had a video taken of it and everything, you know, and submitted it. Like that works. It's like, wow, here's somebody who really went above and beyond. And even Brian Ralston did this. He submitted to do the Lord of the Rings television series, which ended up going to Bear McCreary. But I know that Brian got some contacts and other things out of it. Definitely gets, you said, besides dumb luck, how do you tilt the odds in your favor? Well, it's doing stuff like that. So yeah, I think that I've seen it work for people. So if you're willing to be, if you're not too risk averse, I think it's worth it.
More importantly, though, there's a Lord of the Rings television series.
Yeah, you haven't watched Rings of Power?
Rings of Power.
Oh man,
Rings of Power. What's it on?
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime.
Oh, I had no idea.
Oh, you've been missing out.
So out of the loop.
Yeah, there's mixed reviews. Let's say that.
Not about the music though.
The music's great. Yeah.
Next question here from Paul C., which the film and television music industry seems to be slowly reducing itself to the two-tiered structure of A-list composers and those who write/ghostwrite for them. The latter's compensation is often unsustainable and their opportunity for career growth severely stunted. How can this situation be remedied? And if it isn't, does it portend the industry's eventual self-destruction? Good question. Little doom and gloom, but a great question. I have some thoughts on this one, but Mike, I know that you, as someone who has worked with assistant composers directly, and I've been the assistant composer, not to you, but to others. So any thoughts on this?
I don't know if that's, I understand, Paul C., where you're coming from. I've seen a lot of no-name composers getting some big things now. So there's, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with the premise. I see there was a trend where you had the famous composer and then like 20 people working for that composer. And I think there's a trend away from that. Mm-hmm. At least that's how I've seen things. There still is the big, movies where even if you get a project, you're going to put a team together.
Yeah.
No one can do this alone. This is not possible anymore. So even if you're a no name who just gets an awesome project, you better get your team ready.
Yeah.
Chris Beck, it talks about this. He was on a podcast. I forget where it was, but he's all about like putting your team. You get the project, immediately get your team together. I got a project. I'm working on a Disney project for the parks. It's been a while. It's been about a year since I've written anything, but I'm going back to it. And I signed the contract. And the first thing I did was call up 3 people that I know I've worked with in the past and be like, you ready? Let's go. And you just get them like, and you're going to have people that do arranging, do orchestration, do mock-ups and stuff. So I don't know if that answered your question, but like, I don't know if that's totally true.
I think I'm right there with you. I'm not sure I agree that is necessarily the case or that it's any different than it's been in the past. Like, yeah.
I mean, it's always gonna be the case where like the popular guy he's hot and then they have to just do the work.
Yeah.
But it's short-lived.
There will always be the John Williamses or the really, really, really big in-demand composers that seem to be dominating the entire film TV space, and they're going to be around. But also like the movie, what was it? Everything Everywhere All at Once. Mm-hmm. The people that did the music for that movie, it was a band, right? Yep. Yeah. So and they were up for an Oscar for Best Score, weren't they? Yep. So like, I actually see the world as opening up and becoming maybe a little bit more accessible for composers and for people who aren't even necessarily composers to kind of dip their toe in.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, but if you are starting out and you get an opportunity to write additional music, I mean, go for it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to learn, because then you're not in the hot seat. There's being in the hot seat, which is less musical. And then there's not being in the hot seat, which is you got to actually compose music. And so it depends on what you want. If you feel like you're more of that personality that you can like, you're good with people and you really can make people feel at ease and you're good in meetings when you're if you're working on a big project, there's like a boardroom with 12 people, can you make everyone feel confident that you've got it handled, But if you're not that personality type, that's okay. Maybe you're better suited to be the one who makes that person look good,
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, and I would say it actually might be better to start out as someone else's, like as part of someone else's team.
I mean, if you can get to do that. And a lot of these guys, I mean, I'm a fan of Lorne Balfe. I think he's super talented. I love the way that he runs things. I don't know the details, but he seems to run things really well and he treats everybody with respect. And, all the composers that worked with him seem to have really enjoyed the process. And I know a lot of composers also share the cue sheet. There's some that don't. Right. There's some that do. It's not right or wrong. But if you can get cue sheet, that's pretty cool.
By cue sheet, you mean royalties? That's
cue sheet. Right. Do we know what cue sheet is? Sorry.
Cue sheet?
Cue sheet is when if you're part of ASCAP or BMI and your music is in a movie or a television show, they will track the performance of that movie or television show all over the world, and then you would get. Through their calculations, you would get a check in the mail every quarter or so based off of those performances. So,
yeah, so that's one of the main ways that television composers get paid is from the ongoing royalties of the cue sheet, and sharing that cue sheet with their assistants and their team is an option that some composers do.
Yeah,
I'm with you, Mike. I think I have a lot of thoughts about this question because I did some additional writing work in the early stages of my career. I have friends who have gone that route and they've been additional writers. They've done various functions as team members of composers, whether it's orchestrating, arranging, or other type of assistant work. There was an article that came out about a year ago about the assistant industry, and it talked about how the term assistant in this industry is often it is something that the title kind of belies the position, whereas that's in a lot of the corporate world, the title of assistant means you're not doing that much, you're doing important stuff, but not to the level of other people. Whereas assistant composers are often people with advanced degrees and extensive musical training and have been playing piano for 20 years and have all this orchestration knowledge and are doing really important high-level things. But you touched on it earlier, Mike, that the idea of trying to do an entire film or TV project as a one-person show is just completely ludicrous. It's not possible because there's too much to do, to compose the music, to produce and orchestrate the music, to set up a recording session, to get to run a recording session. I mean, there's a reason that recording studios employ multiple people to do setup and tear down and make sure that all that, there's just not enough time or human bandwidth for one person to do everything that is needed to get music ready for a project. The same way that there isn't enough bandwidth for one person to make a TV show by themselves or to make a film completely by themselves. There's always a huge team of people. That's why the credits for movies are so long.
I'll say, all of the projects that I worked on as a one person composing. Like I was the person in the hot seat, and I was also 22 years old, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right. And so like all I was doing was making music. I fell into it by accident, and I suddenly found myself sitting across from like, a big time television producer, threatening to sue me for no reason. So to jump into a situation like that, you might find yourself in an area that's a little bit more than you were prepared to handle. And so I think, had I known that I could go write additional music and sort of, learn the lay of the land that way, and not have to be the person who is being threatened to get sued or whatever, I feel like that would be a great place to start. It's a lot, like you're saying, Steve, like taking on a full film project or a TV project, or even taking on little bits of things here and there. It can be a lot to handle as a composer because there's a lot that goes into it that's not music related at all, and if you haven't really been in that world before and you're pretty green in terms of Hollywood and how to navigate those types of relationships and conversations, it can be a little dicey.
Yeah. For me, the part of this question that I disagree with most is probably the fact that the opportunity for career growth is severely stunted by being an assistant. I think that I think it's certainly, I've known it to happen where people spend their entire career as an assistant composer and they never get a full, they never get a music by person credit on a project, but they also make a decent living, if they get the cue sheet, if they get enough consistent work and they're on a salary that's supporting them and they can make a viable financial career out of it. The premise of career growth being stunted by that, I think, would be more up to them and their own values and what they want out of their career. If they want the glory and the spotlight and they want to be that person going in and negotiating and sitting with the director and making creative decisions, versus if they want to be a person doing work that they enjoy and providing for their life and their family and whatever it is, whatever financial goals they have. That's a wildly personal thing to determine. Your value structure is completely up to you, and whatever it is that you need to do in order to meet those values is your responsibility, quite frankly. And I think that it's certainly, I don't want to discount this question though, because I think that there is a potential to get trapped in the dead end, quote unquote, position of being really low on the totem pole. If you spend 45 years as an intern at a recording studio, kind of oops, but also, that's kind of on you. But it also shows that there is, like any industry, there's, there's the potential for not getting everything that you need or everything that you want from your employment situation, and you got to be able to make adjustments or have those conversations or ask for what you need or find a different situation that's better suited. And that's true in any industry. That's not just true in creative fields. It's, you could work for an insurance company and find your opportunities for career growth stunted. It's not, that's not unique to this world.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of like, it's better you're going to have better success if you kind of forge your own path. Mm-hmm. And what I see, there's definitely a temptation to want to maybe change the system. And I think there's always an opportunity to do something like that. But boy, is that hard, to be like, it's almost better to like, all right, let me see what I can do here. What can I'm very much about the independent American spirit here. Okay. So I think that you're going to be more successful if you can kind of think that way.
And it also kind of assumes that there is a path to take as a composer to be successful, which
right, and there
isn't, right? Like it's not like you go to medical school, you get your license, you become a doctor. There's no clear path to success. Like in any creative industry, 90% of your success, if you experience it, is luck. Being in the right place at the right time with the right people and being prepared for that, right? Maybe 10% of it is how good you are or how much time you spend pursuing it. Some of the most talented, driven musicians in the world will literally never, ever get an opportunity to do anything professionally. And for the rest of their lives, they'll be sitting there playing because they love it. On the flip side of that, there are a lot of people who are very successful, who are famous musicians, who aren't the most talented or even the most driven musicians in the world. If you're going to step into pursuing music as a career, at the very, very baseline, you have to be doing music because you love it. You have to be willing to continue to do it. It has to be one of those things where it's like, I'm going to do this whether or not I ever make a dime off of it because I feel internally like I have to, but there is no set path to success. And so I don't know, does it portend the end of the industry or something like that, or does it sort of like narrow somebody's chances of being successful in this industry? Your chances of being successful in this industry are already quite narrow. So just keep moving forward and just keep making music and just keep working on projects because you enjoy the creative process.
Yeah, I agree with you. And how do you increase your luck? It's when preparation meets opportunity.
Yes.
So,
Perfectly,
the more prepared you
put.
are, and if you get that sort of random opportunity that seems to come out of nowhere, if you're prepared, you're going to crush it. Sometimes when we see these brief sort of like, oh my gosh, why did that person get that gig? Or like, good for them, I guess, but why them? And I'm sure we've all thought that. But what I've seen is that often is not a long-standing thing. You don't see them coming back and doing repeat things. It's sort of like the people that I personally respect are the ones that are maybe a little bit, they're a few tiers down below that, but they have these long careers and they're solid. They're reliable. They can go, and that they can accomplish exactly what's needed. And so that's something that I think is really cool. So yeah. I don't know. You can do, because I think if you're just hoping to be the one that just shoots off like a rocket, that's not a good, that's kind of like gambling.
Right. And I also agree with the premise that if that is what you're looking for, being an assistant or being a ghostwriter is not the path that's going to take you there.
Increasing your preparations so that when that opportunity comes and you do happen to strap onto a rocket ship, you're more likely to stay there.
Yeah, it's true. The better you are, the better chance you have of being in the right place at the right time. But I also, I think the heart of this question is really about how the silent, invisible team are and how they are treated and how that it is. So I think that's that. I mean, not to discount anything that we've said. I mean, I think that we
tend to go off on tangents when we're answering these questions.
We do, and that's all right. That's. I mean, we asked for open-ended questions. We didn't ask for, can I make music? Yes, you can. Next question.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of unfairness in the world. The world is messed up. We all know that. It's been that way for thousands of years. And I don't know, maybe I'm getting myself in trouble thinking that way, but you can't just be negative and cynical and complain about things. You have to, I don't know. You got to be much more optimistic. And I think it's two parts. I think one part is optimism and not being so defeatist about it. And I think that is what leads to advocacy for oneself. Yeah.
I think that's really the way the situation can be remedied. I think it's twofold. I mean, I think the agreement has to happen at all levels, where the people who are on the team need to be empowered and feel like they can say, here's what I need from this. And the person putting the team together needs to be able to say, oh, okay, well, I can meet you halfway here, or no. I think that there's so much fear. I think that it's the same kind of fear that, as a composer submitting for a project, the fear that you're not going to get the gig and they're going to choose someone else. There's that same kind of fear when you're looking to be part of a team of a composer, that, oh, you don't want to work 23-hour days? Well, fine, I'll find someone who will. And right. I wish I was exaggerating, but unfortunately, that's part of the reason that this question's kind of poignant, is that I'm not.
Yeah. And I think, well, again, I think that's, I know this discussion, and there's a lot of discussion about this. And I think that what we see are composers are creative people. And then all of a sudden they're thrust into this situation where they have to be sort of operators of a business. And that's a dangerous combination. It is. And it's not to defend anybody, but this is a problem amongst a lot of composers, is like, oh crap, I have to hire a team, and I have to be like a boss, and I have to deal with human beings that work for me. And that's something that doesn't come, it's not like a natural thing for people, especially if you're like a crazy, genius, And so there's definitely, but there's a lot of crazy bad stuff that happens as a result of that, when you mix those two things together, which I'm not defending, but it's just this is a weird business. If you're going to get into writing music for media, it's not like getting a job at Chipotle or something. No,
I mean, I think this is a good discussion to have, because it is an environment where a lot of people who are looking to get into the industry may find themselves at this early stage of your composing career. You may be working in one of
stick up for yourself. You're not gonna you're gonna be more respected if you do.
But also so what you were saying, Steve, about you're not gonna work 23 hours or whatever. Well, whether you're working on someone's team, or you are the person in the hot seat, or the sole person working on, especially if you're the sole person working on a project, you're going to be working those 23 hours. Yeah. It's not 9 to 5. I clock in at 9 o'clock. I leave at 5 and go home and, hang out. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're first starting out, and you're trying to make a name for yourself, you're going to be grinding. Yep. And you're going to be grinding long hours. At least that's from my perspective. Even when I'm working on music that's my own music, I'm grinding long hours. I wake up at 5 a.m. and I don't stop recording until 3 a.m. And then I go to sleep and I do it all again the next day. And I'm not saying that you should settle for that, but I'm saying that figure out where that line is for yourself. If you are working on somebody's team and they're pushing you super hard, figure out where that line is, where you're actually learning kind of what it's like to work in this industry. And then, where on the other side of that line, you're actually being taken advantage of. And it can be really, it can be a blurry line, but you have to be able to develop the skin that's thick enough, essentially, to be successful in this industry, which might mean working a full 24 hours sometimes. And it sucks, but it's especially if you're in the hot seat and you want to be the hotshot composer.
And let's talk quickly about the reason that is necessary. It's not just because the grind is glamorous. This is not an industry where it's if you're not working all the time, then you're worthless. it's because this is project-based work. It's things that have to get done, and there are deliverables that need to be completed by a deadline because that is part of a schedule that was set forth by several levels above everyone at the music level. It's the production company or the distribution agreement that requires that these things are done at a certain time, because if the music's not finished and the episode or the show or the movie can't ship, or it's going to ship without this important thing, that's going to affect the bottom line of the giant production companies that have hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. So I have friends who have been in these environments where the stress gets to the people and people get yelled at. People have their competence questioned. They have their people lose their decorum and act unprofessionally. It's not a good thing, but it does happen, and let's not sugarcoat that. And I think that's where, my point about the advocacy for yourself and respect for yourself, but also balance that with what Chris said about develop the thicker skin and understand, don't take it personally. If someone's yelling at you because, there's an incorrect font size on a rehearsal letter of a score, that's not because you're dumb. That's because there's a huge amount of stress involved.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that's how you could summarize. Like, if you ever feel like you're being attacked or very likely the person that's talking to you's got something going on. Yeah. Very likely this person is is on an incredibly high amount of stress.
Yeah.
And they're just taking it out because, again, like I said, they don't know how to work. I mean, they don't know how to work with people, most of them, because it's new, maybe. And they don't think to just be the filter.
Yeah.
Right.
One composer that I work with, it was a joy. Well, Chris Lennertz is one of them. He's amazing. He's like the best, and James Venable years ago. They had this ability to just be that S filter, if you will. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you're not always going to see that. So yeah, people should have their own. If you don't, when I got married, I was still getting calls from this one composer that was working those kind of 24-hour days. And they're like, hey, you need to come here now and fix this computer, or else I'm not calling you again. And I was like, all right, I'm not coming. Bye. And I just hung up.
Right.
And then I ended up working for a different composer who was like more my speed, someone who valued family and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So
understand where your own boundaries are. And in this industry, mm-hmm. I mean, there's a Winston Churchill quote, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And that's I think, very applicable
Churchill,
in this industry. Yeah. Thanks for that question, Paul. Got us some lively discussion going. So thank you for that. Let's go to one that's a little bit more practical music question. This is from Chip, who would like to see a tutorial about the best way to transition from different scenes, for example, from a calm scene to a fast-paced scene. Now, for me, this question sparks a good discussion about working with directors and how to use music to follow drama. So, Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts about not just scene transitions, but following the story of the project with your music. What are your tips for that?
Yeah, in PLV's video, did you guys watch that one?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
She had a specific problem. She had that specific problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's a suspended cymbal will get you anywhere.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, the thing is about tempo changes. Usually, you want to have a tempo change happen when there's like a hold or something. So it's just easier. If you're working with a live orchestra, it's just easier. Yeah. And they can hear the new tempo, and then all of a sudden you're in the new tempo.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know. It's all context dependent.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a very broad question. It is. And that's what I was getting at, is that it's all about context. I think the action of the scene and the drama of the story will inform most of this. And so I think the best way to understand that is having a thorough conversation with the director, having the spotting session, which is when you watch the project, watch the episode, the movie with the director, the producers, all of the decision makers. If you're lucky, the music editor will be there too, if they're already attached to the project. And that's usually like a full day, like a full 6 to 8 hour day of watching the movie a few times, watching it from a few different starting points, and really understanding intimately what the director's intention is. And for me, the best way to do that is to make sure you're having a conversation about emotions that you want the audience to feel, not necessarily about specific musical ideas. If you say the word suspended cymbal in a spotting session, unless your director is also a musician, don't do that. That's some of the, when I took a filmmaking course at the New York Film Academy a couple of years ago, and when the unit about music came up, I had all my classmates were asking me for advice on this because they knew what I'm doing, and I told them, unless you are a musician, like to the point where you could do your own score, don't try to communicate to your composer in musical terms, because you'll get confused. You'll talk past each other. They will deliver you barbecue ribs when you ordered salmon. That's that, you got to make sure that you're speaking in more abstract terms that ironically make it more clear and help you understand. Like, focus on what you want the audience to feel. And so from the composer's perspective, focus on what the director wants the audience to feel, moment by moment. You'll have your scene markers where, okay, we're starting off calm, and then suddenly there'll be, a tank bursts through the wall, and now we're in a chase scene, and that'll be pretty obvious when that sort of thing happens.
Yeah, the best thing is just watch movies. See what you're see what people do. I mean, this probably dates me, but we're John Williams fans here, okay? And there's this great scene at the opening of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's young Indiana Jones, and he's basically young Indiana Jones is with his friends and everything. But it's kind of like a long kind of calm cue. It's like, they show, look at this artifact they just here, and it's like strings and everything. And then young Indiana Jones is in there to sneak in to steal it. And the moment he picks it up, there's this like staccato string thing. He's not moving anywhere. He's not doing anything. But there's this sense of like, kind of like movement. That's like, that's like, what's going on? And he's just looking at it. And then they start to slowly crawl out. And the music is like going at this fast tempo. They're crawling out of the cave. And then they jump out, and then they get on I don't know if you guys remember this, but they get onto the train, and then there's that whole train sequence. And that's where the music just is just nuts. It's like, so he kind of alludes to this huge chase scene that's about to come when the kids are just like crawling in the dirt very slowly. I don't know. It's stuff like that that's just like genius, because there's nothing on the screen that says there should be a faster paced music. Yeah. You're like hinting towards like, oh, something's happening here. Oh man, we're about to start an adventure. That's John Williams is the genius. Jerry Goldsmith. These are the masters of this stuff. Watch what they've done.
Yeah, film composing. It's such an interesting musical expression, right? Because a lot of composers develop and accumulate all of this technical skill and technical knowledge. But your main purpose in the project is not technical knowledge. Your main purpose in the project is storytelling. You're working with the director, and you're both working on telling a story, and you're both using different tools to support telling the same story. So, Steve, what you were talking about, that thing that you said, like, don't talk to your composer in musical terms, talk in emotions, talk in vibes, feelings. What's the message? What do you want your audience to feel in this moment? Even as a composer, when you're looking at something, not asking, what string sound would sound good here, or what articulation would be good here.
Right.
Start with, what's the vibe? What do I want the people who are watching this? What do I want them to feel? As much as my lack of technical knowledge has gotten in my way in a lot of ways, I think that in this specific case, it actually helped me quite a bit, because I never had the problem of, how do I transition to this from this vibe to this vibe? Because I didn't have it in my mind like, oh, well, maybe this type of, motif would help drive it, or maybe a suspended cymbal, or maybe it was all about feeling.
Right.
What is this? What's the feeling here? Yeah,
exactly.
And going and finding, even if it's just one sound that communicates that feeling and makes the audience feel that. And so, yeah, I think you're composing music for film is a really interesting dance because you're trying to do something with your skill that's not necessarily about your skill. You're using your skill to do something that's kind of unrelated to your skill, but you're telling the same story. You know what I mean? It's it's an interesting thing for sure.
Well, it's a lot of intuition, but I think it's important. You know, our brains are like the ultimate LLM. It's this machine learning, and the more data that you can train this meat computer with, the better the outcome will be. Right? So the more you can study, the more you can, just analyze what other people have done. Then you got more of this sort of bag of tricks that you can choose from. Mm-hmm. Just sort of intuitively, it'll just come out in the moment.
Yeah, but you have to internalize that bag of tricks in a way that it comes out
in a way that's not like, well, let me get all like nerdy about it. It's this is happening in this scene, therefore I will do this chord and this chord. It never should be like that.
Right.
It's like
exactly.
Somehow in our brains, we just know, we see the visual and there's like this, you feel it and you kind of just know what to do. Mm-hmm. And that comes from like people that have studied a lot or just have done it a lot.
Yeah. I think doing it a lot is a really good thing. Watching a lot of movies, doing it a lot, messing around with it too, because you might watch a bunch of movies where John Williams might be the master of making these transitions, but you might actually do it differently in a way that's unique to you. Maybe if you try and do what John Williams did to transition from a slow paced scene to a fast paced scene, because you're the person doing it, it won't work in the same way.
It won't, because you're emulating someone else, because he's making those choices based off of his machine learning algorithm.
Exactly.
From his days of playing in the CBS orchestra in the 40s and whatever. The rest
find
of
your
us,
own ways. Experiment. Find your own ways to do it.
Right.
I think that's really all it comes down to, because the other thing is when you're composing music for media, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Chris, it's a supporting role, and ultimately we're all in service of the story. And that's true with the directors too. Like, they're choosing certain camera angles, they're choosing who's included in what shot, they're choosing how long it stays on a certain shot. And all of that is about how the audience should feel. Whatever it is that you do compositionally, it's going to either work. It's going to work on certain level or it's not. And there's a lot of ways that you can hone that a little bit more. One of the most important ones is use of themes. And if you have how, as a composer, you use themes, whether it's you have a theme for a specific character, or if you have a theme for a certain event that happens in the movie, and by theme I mean a melodic idea or some type of musical idea that recurs as different things in the movie happen over and over, and being able to change that theme, whether you make it faster or slower or played on different instruments, or if it's specific type of sound, like something for like example Dune. A lot of that soundtrack is less about melody and harmony and rhythm than it is about the sonic texture of what you're actually hearing, the way that the instruments sound and the way that they were crafted through a lot of sound design. Then that goes back, way farther than that. I mean, in the Matrix, the sound of the water phone, that unique instrument that's bowed metal sound that gives you all those eerie high pitched tones.
Chris will add that sound right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Sorry.
I think I have it somewhere.
Yeah, just load it up on Musio. Water phone, parentheses, wet, C4.
No, I think that's a really good point, Steve. And I guess the thing that I would say is try not to approach it from the standpoint of writing music. Try to approach it from the standpoint of painting a picture using sound. Like you are painting a sonic landscape, and you're using the medium of music or sound to do that. And however, whatever you're, bringing your own personal style to that, obviously, but you need to internalize the mechanisms of creating music so much that when you're coming to something as you're trying to sort of paint the sonic landscape, you can say, I want this texture, and you can sort of arrange the music in a way to create that texture or that vibe or that feeling. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something else I think is important that kind of ties into a lot of what not only this episode so far, but the previous episode, on the subject of relationships and working with directors and all of that. As composers who are writing for specific media, whether it's film, TV, video games, theme parks, Mike, there are so many places in which what we call incidental music that is used for a purpose to support something. There are so many potential applications for it that go beyond just music to listen to, which is the world we live in. It used to be, a couple hundred years ago, the only way to experience music was to hear a musician play it and either be the musician playing it or go to a performance of a musician playing it. And now music is such a significant part of so much that we do, whether it's, even art installations or things like that. I think that one of the most valuable things that you as a composer can do is develop your understanding of the medium for which you want to compose as much as you possibly can. If you want to be a film composer, you better understand film. But take some classes or watch some YouTube videos or read some articles about cinematography and learn about the techniques of how filmmakers put things together and the ways in which the conventions for that medium are designed and the reason that things are chosen. Because one of the things that I learned in my NIFA class was how intentional every single thing about what happens in a film or TV show is. Everything that's there on screen is there on purpose and chosen for a specific reason that is in support of the story. The way it's lit, how dark or bright it is, what colors are included, how much material is in the background, what exactly is in each frame. Every single thing that you see is there on purpose. And if it's not there, they'll either remove it in editing or leave people guessing, why is that included? But in a professional context, it's always there on purpose. So understanding that and knowing how to mirror that with your music and how to make sure that everything that's included in your composition is there for a purpose. Oftentimes, less is more. You might not necessarily, especially in the modern world when a lot of the media that's getting made is stuff for YouTube and things that are not going to have giant CGI budgets and other things to require a big, complex, dramatic orchestration.
All right. So can I add a question? Mailbag? Can I add a question to the mailbag?
Yeah.
So we've been following Sora. We just saw the news, and not to be doomer, but we saw the news from Tyler Perry. We know the producer of many big movies. He has ended the production or the creation of his $800 million movie studio that he's not going to be doing now, specifically as a result of seeing these videos. So we've seen really high quality videos. I saw 11 Labs actually used their tools to add sound design to these things. What I haven't seen, perhaps thankfully, is that music is still the thing that is not being done yet. What is, in your guys' opinion, what does it look like, for the future? What does the future look like? I mean, this stuff is amazing. The Sora videos are it blew my mind when I just saw them recently. It's still going to need good music. And all of the AI music stuff that I've heard handles things like EDM fairly well. The stuff that has a beat to it is more electronic. But quote cinematic and orchestral music, I haven't heard good examples of, and maybe we're safe from that for now. What do you think? Let's ramble about this subject.
Yeah,
back to AI.
Yeah, well, hey, that's where we're at, right?
No, it's
I feel like Tyler Perry shutting down his $800 million film studio was maybe a little premature. Yes. The clips from Sora are amazing, especially considering the fact that they were generated by AI.
Yeah.
But at least to me, and I don't know about you guys, when I was watching them, it's almost kind of like watching a parody of there's this weird sort of uncanny valley parody, unrealistic thing about it, and I'm not sure. I think that this this technology with Sora will be really great for, advertising, and really great for those mediums. We'll probably use it quite a bit, you know what I mean? To generate video footage for our website and that kind of stuff. Like I could see it being useful there. I don't necessarily see it. I don't see computers fully being able to like emulate the human quality of art and creation because they haven't been able to. Like even the more manual computer technology that's far more advanced, or it's had more time to develop than AI, and it's been around for a long time. Live sampled orchestras. You know what I mean? Sample libraries. They still don't necessarily replace the feeling of having a live orchestra play your music. And so, it's, and sample libraries have been around they've been an industry standard for a long time for mock-ups and even for scores. But I know that doesn't answer your question as far as like what the future of music looks like in this world that we're in, and the music that maybe needs to be created for these Sora videos and that kind of thing. But I was just surprised to hear that Tyler Perry shut down his studio, and I think that was dumb. There must have been other reasons.
Yeah,
listen.
When I read it too, I was like, maybe he's just using Sora as the excuse.
Yeah, as an excuse.
I mean, possibly. I don't want to necessarily.
Who knows, right?
But who knows? If I had $800 million, I might be a little bit more cautious about deploying it in that after seeing that. But I don't know. I don't have $800 million, so it's a moot point. When I first saw the Sora videos, my first thought was, oh, cool, I'm going to use this for scoring practice.
Yeah.
I'm going to use this to generate a bunch of little 1-minute videos that I'm going to take an afternoon to just kind of keep my chops sharp and just make sure that I can do dramatic music for a scene like this. I could use this for a proof of concept. That's to me all that it really is going to do. And I said, and I think in our AI episode, I said that my gut tells me that the average consumer will go and see 1, maybe 2 AI generated feature films for the novelty and then lose interest.
I just don't think it'll get that far. I think that Sora and these things will be able to create, really, really, really great pharmaceutical ads. I don't think it's going to make Dances with Wolves. You know what I mean? It just because there's so many things, as you were just talking about, Steve, like the intentionality of everything that's in a feature film. There are very human decisions made from a lot of different angles. The lighting, the positioning of the camera, the script, the scenes, like why is the scene here? How is that moving the story? If the scene doesn't move the story forward in some way, shape, or form, you need to remove that. There are all of these different choices, from the gaffers to the cinematographer to the director to the actors, all of these different human choices that go into making a film. It's a very complex machine, organic machine that happens in that creative space. I don't know. I don't think it's something that can be distilled down to like ones and zeros very easily.
I hear you. And I hope that's the case. I'm with you.
Ads.
Like my hope is with Chris.
Pharmaceutical ads, yeah.
No more pharmaceutical ads, period. But that's.
I mean, yeah, that'd be nice too. No, I agree. I think that there's a lot of doom and gloom around AI, but I think that as we've said, the creative process is the part that's enjoyable, and the machines can't replace that. People are, if we want to just be blunt about it, there's already enough media. There's already more movies and TV shows and songs to listen to than anyone can listen to or watch in their lifetime. And people try, this is the world we live in. We've got a lot of people trying to make it through it. What was that tweet that I saw that said, I finished YouTube. I saw everything. I'm done now. Which, that's not going to happen. There's already, and the fact that we're 20 years plus into YouTube being a thing that has, and the people are still making videos of the same type and it's evolved, it's changed, there are trends that have risen and fallen, but people continue to do it, and people do it for fun. People do it for their hobby, for their connection with their community, and as a way to meet new people. And they're not all thinking about it as a way to advance their professional career. They're not all thinking about it as a way that something that they're going to monetize. And I think that a lot of the fear around the AI media generation is that it's going to start stealing market share from the people who do monetize these things.
I think it's like what's going to be true now. It's going to be true in 10 years. It's going to be true in 50 years. And there's a novelty about being about like human endeavor, like doing cool things, like humans doing cool things and watching it and being like, that's amazing.
Right.
Even if it's like watching, we talked about solving Rubik's cubes, or just watching somebody play the violin at an exceptional level, watching somebody cook a meal. It's like there's something really cool about a human doing it. It's like impressive, and we want to watch that. I think it might actually become more impressive the further into this AI crap we get into, right?
Yeah.
And those people will stand apart even more vividly, I think. So I think there's going to be AI movies. We're going to have our own custom Hollywood movie. Just I'll write a prompt and I'll be like, I want to watch a movie starring Harrison Ford and Tom Cruise and,
yeah.
And but it's like, it'll just be this fun thing that's like, oh yeah, it's entertaining, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I still will want to go to the theater and see something that's crafted by a talented person who's devoted their life. I don't know.
Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, like when you go to an art museum, a big part of what makes that art so pleasant to look at is the fact that a person made it. Because you're looking at that and you're going, wow, this is beautiful. What a realistic painting, or what a wild idea. But it's all based on the idea that somebody painted that and made that. If it was all AI generated art, you'd go, okay, that's cool. Oh, all right, that's cool. Like it would all lose its impact in that way.
Right.
I honestly think that AI generated art is a really big buzz right now because it's new, because it's novel, because it's this new paradigm, and we're messing around with it, and we all like to go on Midjourney and type in prompts and see what comes out. And I think that that's cool. That's fine. I also think it's going to fizzle out at a certain point. I really do. Yeah. Because I think that AI generated art is going to find its place within the creative community. And yes, it will, displace some jobs. It absolutely
already has.
There are people who film pharmaceutical ads, who, if these pharmaceutical companies can just, generate an ad of people looking happy on a sailboat taking, whatever pharmaceutical they're taking, they won't need to hire those crews of people. And so there will be some job displacement, but I don't think it will necessarily be on the scale that we're all worried about, because I think it'll settle into its place within the creative industry. And the pieces of AI that we're going to find sort of most ubiquitous are the pieces that are maybe a little bit less sexy than Sora, a little bit more like tool heavy, help you do your job a little bit more efficiently kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see, I think the other thing is that when new tools like this come out, people take it almost as a challenge to find the ways to use it in a way that is hard, and use it in a way that is impressive, that someone could use Midjourney to generate frame by frame a stop motion film. I wouldn't put it past someone to do that for the sake of running that marathon and creating something really substantial that requires a lot of effort and creative endeavor for the sake of doing the creative endeavor. And that's what we're talking about, is people will always want to make those. There are still composers who write with pencil and paper and then learn it on piano and then do the mock-up one instrument at a time. And that's great. There's been a lot of studies showed that show how when you write things down by hand, when you're taking notes in class, or when you're doing something, when you're drawing or writing a manuscript, yes, you remember it better. for several reasons. One is that it takes longer, so you're spending more time with the thought and with the idea, and so you're committing it to memory more. But there's also a physical action that your brain remembers too. So, yeah, I mean that's another one. When you're doing your orchestration practice, use a big physical pencil and paper score, and you'll get farther. Just write out the voice leading that way. You'll learn more.
And the operative word in that being big. So make sure it's a giant pencil that you have to hold with both hands.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yes, one of those comically. Yeah,
you'll never forget it.
Yeah, exactly.
That took me 5 hours
to write 4 bars of music. The good old days.
Well, I hope the techno optimists are right, that the future is going to be this utopian society. People are.
I don't think utopian society is.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's a vision of the future by a lot of these folks on Twitter that's flying cars and sort of spaceship looking buildings, and where people aren't having to do mundane jobs anymore, and we'll just all be being artists and being creative and writing music and just living in this awesome utopia. That sounds awesome to me. Although
that sounds great. Yeah.
Although anytime humans are involved, I doubt that anything like that is possible. But I think we're always going to want to be creative. I know that. That's a true thing.
Right.
10 years from now, 50 years from now. And I think we're always going to want to hear what humans have to make. So I think that's our conclusion.
I'm proud of us, guys. That was pretty good.
Only took us, 3 hours
6
total?
hours. Let's keep doing this. I mean, again, I don't know. What do people think? Yeah, do Mailbag number 3 and just get more questions. And
open it up for more questions, yeah.
Yeah, whatever you want to ask about.
I think every episode we'll always ask, how do you make money out of music? We'll try our best to answer that.
I wish there was some kind of physical process that you could literally make money out of music. That would be cool. If there was some kind of machine that you could just cram your music into and then out the other side came money. That would be really cool.
That would be cool.
Well, good job, guys. And thank you all for listening. I hope that we had something of value to share with you guys and answered your questions in a way that was helpful for you. If you have any questions about music, whether it's about creating music, the music industry, making money, which is, I guess, kind of the same thing, or Musio, anything, write us at orchestrated@musio.com. And if you guys like this episode and you want to hear more like it, please share it, rate it, review it. Every rating, every review is helpful. And also, we just like to know how you guys are enjoying it. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next time.